Peter was a freshman who had just moved into the old dorm on campus. He was excited to start his new life, but he also felt a little apprehensive. The dorm was just so creepy. It had been built in the early 1900s, and it showed. The paint was peeling, the windows were cracked, and the floorboards creaked ominously underfoot. But despite its dilapidated appearance, the dorm was still in use, housing a new generation of college students. On the first night, Peter couldn't sleep. He kept hearing strange noises, footsteps in the hallway, whispers in the dark. He tried to ignore them, but he couldn't help but feel like he was being watched. The next day, Peter talked to some of his other dorm mates about the strange noises. They told him that they had all heard them too. Some of them even said that they had seen strange things, like shadows moving in the corners of their rooms and doors opening and closing on their own. Peter was starting to get scared. He started to avoid the dorm as much as possible, but it was hard to do when he had classes and homework to worry about. One night, Peter was studying in the library when he heard a noise behind him. He turned around, but there was no one there. He went back to studying, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being followed. When Peter got back to the dorm, he was surprised to see that his door was open. He hadn't left it open. He stepped inside and looked around, but he didn't see anything out of the ordinary. Peter closed the door and locked it. He went to his room and started to get ready for bed. He was about to turn off the light when he saw something move in the corner of his room. It was a shadow. It was tall and thin, and it was moving towards him. Peter screamed and backed away, but the shadow kept coming. Peter reached the door and tried to open it, but it was locked. He turned around and saw that the shadow was right behind him. He raised his hands to protect himself, but the shadow was too fast. It reached out and touched his face. Peter felt a searing pain, and he screamed again. He fell to the ground, unconscious. When Peter woke up, he was in the hospital. His roommate was sitting next to his bed. "What happened?" Peter asked. "You were found in your room, unconscious," his roommate said. "You have a scratch on your face, but the doctors don't know what caused it." Peter looked at his roommate. "I know what caused it," he said. "It was the shadow." His roommate shook her head. "There's no such thing as shadows," she said. But Peter knew what he had seen. He knew that the shadow was real. Peter was discharged from the hospital the next day. He went back to the dorm, but he couldn't bring himself to stay in his room. He slept on his roommate's couch for the rest of the week. The following Monday, Peter decided to transfer to another dorm. He couldn't take the haunted dorm anymore. Peter packed up his belongings and checked out of the dorm. He walked out into the sunlight and took a deep breath. He was finally free. But as Peter walked away, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He turned around and looked at the old dorm. The windows were empty and the doors were closed, but Peter knew that the shadow was still there. It was waiting for him to return. Peter turned and walked away, never to look back.